Claremore, and he and I met actually at Mapits back in March. And it turns out we all know some of the same people. Tad was at school last Sunday in the auditorium for the Rope and Fool show and organ recital by Mark Herman. And he gave us gave a little teaser of what he's going to tell us today about the happenings at the memorial. And but anyway, Tad is a Claremore native. He was a graduate of the Oologah High School, 1991 was it? And he was an athlete at the University of Tulsa, was a quarterback for the Golden Hurricane under the coaching of then head coach David Rader, Tulsa Rogers class of 75. After that, after getting his degree, he ran for and won the House seat, House District 9, which is Rogers County. I don't know how the districts were drawn back then, but he served in the legislature from 1998 until 2010, or actually, I guess it was 1999 through 2011, I guess. The anniversary date for everybody's start date's the 3rd of January, is it?
No, we actually start in November, so it was 98 to 2010.
Okay, never mind. I'm stuck on the federal level, you know. But anyway, he's also been director of the Will Rogers Memorial since 2014? Yes. And I'm going to turn the show over to Tad Jones to give us a little brief history on the memorial and what's happening there today. Tad, take it away.
Get this computer. I stole this from my wife. She had the day off, so I said, "You don't mind if I steal your computer, do you?" So she's a lawyer, went to TU Law School, and we homeschool 4 boys, and keeps us busy. I've got boys from 18 down to age 9, and it's been a lot of fun. So it's good to be back. I think Mark had me out here several years ago. Janet was such a major part of the Will Rogers Memorial Foundation when I first got the job and to be the director of the Will Rogers Memorial back in 2014. And for about 4 years, I was up at Grand Lake working on activities up there around the lake, and then the opening happened at the Will Rogers Memorial, and it was just really a dream job for me because I grew up in Claremore my whole life, so I was around the Will Rogers Memorial, and I went to school in Oologah, which is where Will Rogers was born, so I've been around Will my entire life, and in 5th grade I even sang the Will Rogers song that I could probably sing it to you today from when I was up at Oologah for Will's birthday, which was, I've got some books here to give away, a couple of quote books, so I'll ask a question or two, and if you know the answer, then I'll give you a quote book. But what day was Will Rogers born on? Okay.
November 4th.
November 4th. All right, have a Will Rogers quote book. Pass that down. Yeah, that was just 2 weeks ago. So we have Will Rogers days and activities, and so that was a couple of weeks ago. So this is a very exciting time for us at the memorial and for Will Rogers. You know, there's a movie going on. We talked about. We were up there last week at the Will Rogers High School, and they had this 100th year of Will Rogers movie, The Roping Fool. And then Jim Stovall is doing a movie called Will to Win, which is going to be hopefully this next year filmed at the Will Rogers High School, and we'll have Will Rogers in there, and they're trying to find an actor to play Will Rogers, so I'm excited to see who they're going to get. But we have some really neat things going on at the memorial. But before I do that, I want to just kind of go back real quick. I know you guys know about Will Rogers because we're at the Will Rogers Rotary Club, and but I'd like to talk just a quick history about how we got the museum in Claremore. Of course, Will and Wiley flew to Alaska, and everybody asks all the time, you know, how did they crash in Alaska? And I have this picture because I heard a theory just a couple of years ago that I thought was interesting, and so for you pilots out there, this made a lot of sense to me. So anybody tell the difference between those two planes? Top plane flew around the world, the bottom plane is the one they crashed in. What's the major difference between those two planes?
The wings are on
The wings are on the bottom. So it was suggested that because of the wings were at the top of the Winnie Mae, is that was a gravity feed for the gasoline, and because it was wings at the bottom for this plane, it was a pump feed for the gas. So the theory was that as they flew around lost in the fog, one of the wings ran out of gas, and as they landed, when they started to take off and began to turn, there was no gas, just like in a car that would pump into the gas tank, so the engine sputtered and the engine died, and that's when they both crashed. And so there's been a lot of theories, things froze and all that, but that one made a lot of sense, so I thought I would throw that out there for you to see a potential. Of course, there was a crash on, anybody know what day was the crash? Buddy? August 15th. You get one on Will Rogers General quotes. August 15th, and we have a fly at the Will Rogers Memorial. We're at the Will Rogers birthplace around that date every year, honoring Will Rogers and Wiley Post. Of course, the whole world mourned, and the questions were at that point, what are they going to do to honor Will Rogers? Thousands upon thousands of people. Will's casket was right over here, and this is in Los Angeles, and just literally hundreds of thousands of people came by to pay their respects to Will. Congress closed, movie screens went dark, radio moment of silence. Congress actually passed $2 million for a memorial to Will, but it was vetoed by the president because there was no, of course it was during the Depression, and there was no plan on how the money was going to be spent. So during the Depression, he went ahead and vetoed it, and then the Oklahoma legislature stepped up. This is in Claremore. They just want to know where we're going to build this monument in California and Oklahoma, but they bought some land in Claremore in 1911. Will and Betty did to retire at, and Betty decided that's where they were going to put the memorial. And Will Rogers loved Claremore. This was Will Rogers' very first talkie. They had to see Paris, and you can see he sent a crew down to Claremore to shoot from downtown Claremore for his first talking movie, and he even played a character from Claremore. And then in his very last movie, he had named his boat the Claremore Queen, so big fan of Claremore. And then they built the museum in 1938, or back then the memorial in 1938, and then the dedication was on November 4th. President Roosevelt checked in, and we had hundreds of thousands of people that were there listening in for the dedication ceremony. And then Will Rogers was buried in California, and then was moved to Claremore. Does anybody know what year the Sunken Garden was built? This is a little bit of a tougher question. Dan, you've already answered one, but you gotta share the wealth. Anybody want to make a guess? It was a few years after 1938. Anybody want to make a guess as to when the Sunken Garden was built? No guesses?
45.
Close, you were close. Should give you one for effort. 1944 was when this was built, and the crowds were so big it became a memorial. That's why Betty said, we're going to move Will Rogers to Claremore. She actually died that same year that it was opened, and so they've been there ever since. And then we've had several other family members that have been buried there. This is an interesting picture. So you can see the greenery around the Sunken Garden. This is back in the 50s, and now look at a picture of it here today. So you can see over time the greenery's kind of been moved out, and there were trees all over the grounds. We've had trees that have slowly died, but anyway, it's a little different ground there. I show this monument because when I first got the job in 2014, this is in Russellville, Arkansas Tech, and they found this monument sitting outside the basketball gym, and they found these pieces that were in a closet somewhere, and they renovated this. But Will Rogers went there and gave a speech and raised them $2,000 for an airport. And what celebrity at the top of their game goes to a little town and raises money for them? But Will Rogers did. That kind of tells you the kind of person he was. And so they renovated that monument. Of course, Route 66 is one of the biggest things for the museum. It was nicknamed the Will Rogers Highway in 1952, the same year that a movie came out that Will Rogers Jr. played in, the story of Will Rogers. So because of Route 66, we're just a mile off of it. This is a huge thing for us as the memorial. This is just a picture of the statue that was out front. There's 3 more of these statues. Anybody know where what college campus one of these statues is at? Anybody know? College campus.
Rogers State.
No. In Texas. The other 3 statues are in Texas. And the rumor is the rear of this statue is facing Texas A&M, so that marks out Texas A&M. Anybody want to guess? No. No Texas Tech fans here, huh? Texas Tech. Next time you watch Texas Tech, especially football, they wrap that statue up every year or every game, home football game, and my staff got to go down there last year, and they only have a few, like 5 or 6 people that do this professionally, and they let them wrap a little bit, but they wrap this for every football game in Texas Tech. So there's 3 of these statues, other than the one that we have at the memorial. And then it was moved out to the front where the sunken garden is. This is the entryway into the catacombs right there. New wing was built in 1982. This was the last major investment by the state of Oklahoma. We have a theater here and the new Vista Room area right here outside the theater. Then office space was put in 1982. And this is this was a research library that was also put in 1982. And now our offices have been moved into here because we expanded for space for exhibits. We did a major theater renovation about 3 years ago. Our foundations really started stepping up to help us out. This renovation updated the theater, so now when visitors come from anywhere around the world, they can walk over to this ticket booth right here, pick a documentary, the lights automatically dim down, and they can watch a documentary. Plus we do shows here. We've had we can record things, and we can reach anybody across the world through our theater. So it seats about 190 people in our theater. And this, our kids area, was done in the mid-1990s. And this doesn't look like much, but that's the new HVAC system that we desperately needed. We got $1 million when I first got the job. That's our state representative and our state senator that helped us to get the money for that. It was really pretty lucky that I got it. I mean, I literally got the job in 2014, and there was a state committee that passed out money for projects across the state. We weren't on the list, and I got us on the list real quick and just timed out just right for us to get that. So we got $1 million in HVAC. We have weddings and different rental events at the memorial. We just had one this past weekend, and then we have a big for Thanksgiving. And the Milam family, which is related to Will, are going to be having Thanksgiving here, but it's a beautiful setting for rental events. We were run by the Will Rogers Board Commission since 1937. So if you think about, you higher ed and common ed and DHS and all these agencies in their state of Oklahoma, we were our own agency in 1937. And when I got the job, we were looking for ways to be more efficient. It was tough to go to the legislature and get money just for our museum, so we decided to partner or merge with the Oklahoma Historical Society. So this is a picture of former commissioners, and July 1st, 2016, we merged with the Oklahoma Historical Society. So we were actually under the OHS, which the OHS is the one that's trying to do OK Pop downtown. If you haven't had a chance to see that building or go through it, it's a beautiful facility. They just need to get some money for exhibits, but we're under the OHS now. And this is just an aerial shot. We own this property back over here as well. We're hoping to put some parking lots in here. Our foundation owns a little lot over here as well, but just a beautiful picture of the memorial. One of our exhibits that we have, where if you come in, like we're actually closed on Monday, Tuesday in the wintertime, but we had an RV that was parked out front today. I let them sneak in, but she was from Brazil, and you can click on a state here, and it'll give you when Will Rogers visited the state, how he talked about the state, and the legislators or friends that he had in those different states. But it brings a tie in to everybody from around the country and several other countries around the United States and several countries around the world about the relationship and how Will had a connection with them. And you can see it too. You can go to our website, willrogers.com. We had Michael Wallace is the voice of our enhanced audio tour, so he's been a great help for us as well. That is not Will Rogers. If you see that picture, we do get this a lot. I mean, a whole lot. Matter of fact, we had a birthday for Will a couple of years ago, and in the birthday cake that the chamber put together, they used the picture on the left. That guy is not Will Rogers. The other thing is we see a whole lot of quotes that are attributed to Will Rogers that aren't Will Rogers quotes. Probably one of the famous that is, a man learns by 2 ways. One is by reading, and another is associated with smarter people. But the one you see online all the time is a man learns by 3 ways: reading, associated with smarter people, and peeing on the electric fence. Will didn't say that third part, but on Google you will see that all the time. So we have a great group of volunteers. If you're ever looking to volunteer, we got several former ropers from Will Rogers High School that are volunteering. But these are a group of volunteers that help us out with all the events that we have throughout the year. These hands-on historians, we go back to 19th century activities to show people. We have lectures that we have. This is Michael Wallace giving a lecture. We have different people, Bob Blackburn and different people throughout the year that give lectures. And we do movies. Every last Friday of every month we show a classic movie. We have spring break activities. And the reason we did all this is I have 4 boys, and we're trying to get Will Rogers introduced to a new generation of people. And so when I got there, the only thing we really did was a fly-in and some Will Rogers Days activities a little bit, the parade. But we added a whole bunch of activities so we can get kids to see about Will Rogers' character and activities up at the museum. So this is spring break. We have a big paper airplane contest. When I was a kid, we did the Easter egg hunt on the grounds, and so we didn't do that when I first got the job, and we brought that back, and it's a huge event where we have Easter egg hunting. We have a kids camp. We used to do this at the birthplace at Oologah. Now we do it at the memorial. These are 2 of my kids up here in this corner. That's Connor and Pierce. And then now it's called the Wild West Kids Camp that we have at the memorial. And have about 100 kids for that. We just found out a couple years ago that Higgins, Texas honors Will Rogers. And I can't believe we didn't know this, but since 1967, Will Rogers went out there and was a ranch hand in Texas in the Panhandle in Higgins for just a summer. And the town was looking for some way to have an activity, and the town is not very big. I don't know if you've been to Foyle, it's a very small town, a little main street, but they have a Will Rogers Day parade, and so we went down there last year and we won the award. This is our Will Rogers impersonator. What's funny about him is he was standing in line in Branson, Missouri in a show, and somebody goes, "You look like Will Rogers," about 10 years ago. And he kind of laughed and blew it off. And then he visited the memorial, and he goes, "Yeah, somebody told me I look like Will Rogers." I said, "You sure do. We'll get you the hat and the outfit." And he's been our Will Rogers ever since. And he said he loves it because he doesn't really talk. He shows up and smiles and takes pictures. But he does look like Will Rogers. And then we have our Will Rogers and Wally Post fly-in that's at the Birthplace Ranch. We have a National Day of Remembrance where we honor those that had passed away in a small airplane crash. We started a Halloween night at the museum. This has become a huge event for us. We have a couple thousand people that come through and trick or treat on our grounds. We started a motion picture festival a couple of years ago. We survived through COVID a couple of years, and so we had our 4th annual this last year, and it's really grown with getting celebrities out of California. We had Barry Corbin. He's an actor in Yellowstone, a bunch of different movies, Lonesome Dove, and he came up this year as a host. And we've had Rex Lynn and Reba McEntire do awards for us, so it's been pretty neat for our film festival. And then that's Will Rogers Days, which is around Will Rogers' birthday. We have activities with kids and parade. We're going to have the parade this year, but we got rained out. But we'll do it again next year. And this is back in the 50s. Bob Hope came to Claremore. This is downtown Claremore for our parade when Bob Hope came for Will Rogers Days. And then if you put on your calendar, December 2nd and 3rd, the first weekend of the month of December, we have our Will's Country Christmas. This has become a huge event for us at the Birthplace Ranch. So it's a lot of fun. And just a little picture here. This is Oologah Lake right here. Of course, Oologah Lake hasn't been built yet. This is the ranch of Clem. This is Clem Rogers. And when Oologah Lake was being built in the 50s, they cut the house in half and moved it up the hill to where it is now. But this is where the house was sitting when Oologah Lake was built. And because it's been so dry this year, the lake has been down. You can actually go and see the foundation of the house when the lake is low. But the birthplace now is up here on this hill, and we own all this property over here, about 160 acres or so. So that's the Birthplace Ranch in Oologah. And you can see this was done in 2020, but we're looking to sell the birthplace to the Cherokee Nation. Will Rogers never lived in Oklahoma. He lived in Indian Territory. It made sense for us that when Will Rogers lived at the Birthplace Ranch, that the Cherokee, that's really the Cherokee story, and they have the resources to take care of it. Whereas a state facility, it's very difficult for us to get the money to take care of it. So we were looking at selling the house. We signed. This was wasn't an official signing, but a ceremonial signing on November 4th in 2020, and we were literally about 5 seconds away, we were at an OHS board meeting. They had to vote on it in order for it to be approved so we could sell it to the Cherokees. And we had a motion, a second. She's about ready to call the vote, and an attorney got on the Zoom call and said, oh, there's a statute here that has to do with tribal sovereignty that we have to deal with. And so we stopped the vote, and that was 2 years ago. So we were 5 seconds away, and for 2 years, the attorneys now, the Attorney General and the Cherokees Attorney General have been debating back and forth, but we think we're close. Hopefully we can make a deal in the next couple of months and finalize that, but darn attorneys, you know. Fortunately, I married one, but so close. This is a huge day, probably the biggest day for the memorial since 1938 when it was built. The governor signed, this is a ceremonial signing for the Oklahoma Historical Society. They got a $46 million bond package all across the state of Oklahoma, and the memorial gets the largest amount of any one group. We get $7 million to renovate the Will Rogers Memorial. So this is a huge deal for us. And first thing we're going to do is solve our ADA problems. These ramps are not ADA. They don't meet ADA standards. And so we're going to renovate all these, put elevators in. This is the basement. It's been closed for 40 years. We'll have an elevator that'll go down over here and open the basement up for exhibits. And these are our vaults. They don't meet any standard at all for modern day collections. So we're getting a new building that's going to have a new place for all our priceless collections of Will Rogers. So it's a very, very exciting time for us to renovate the museum and get these $7 million of update. Of course, I wish it was before COVID, because everything's probably gone up 50%. So that $7 million needs to be about 12 to do exactly what we want to do. But it's a really exciting time. So look at here, this is the present day picture. Kind of take a look at this garage right here. Our offices are currently sitting right over here. And this is what the future is going to be for the Will Rogers Memorial. So with that $7 million, we're going to build a new entryway. This is where that garage was at. Right now, the entryway, we have a little bitty entryway over here. And if nobody's in the parking lot, they'll park over here a lot of times and try to come in the back door where our offices are. But we're going to change it to where you're going to have no doubt where the entryway is at the museum. We have a statue here, Will Rogers Unifying the World statue we're going to have out front of the Cherokee Kid Plaza. Right over here is going to be the event center. A 3-story event center, the first floor offices, second floor collections, third floor event center, so we can get revenue in. A very exciting time for us. And you can see here the entryway that we're going to have going in. It's going to be great for school buses to drop off, bringing people in. We'll have a gift shop outside. Right now you got to go in the museum to go to the gift shop. Now we'll have a way to visitors can come and just go to the gift shop and come in. Right now we have this is our entryway. It holds about 5 people. And we will build a brand new entryway which can hold a whole bus tour load of people that come in. And we'll force everybody after they've gone through the museum to go through the gift shop as they leave, and that'll be a big deal for us. Right now they don't have to be, but now we're going to force them through, and that'll be a big deal, and it'll triple the size of our gift shop. So we're really excited about what we can do with Will Rogers and sharing him. So I showed you this picture earlier. This is a ramp to our south gallery. Well, we're going to be able to knock this wall out, so as visitors come in through this area here, they'll be walking through that this area right there, and they'll walk into what's our south gallery where our big painting is, our mural. So this wall will go out here, and visitors will come into this area. And we're going to be looking at renovating all the exhibits. So, you know, this is all about the future and kids. We just love this picture of this young man waving a Will Rogers statue. We're going to be creating the Will Rogers World Citizen Experience over the next 3 years. Our goal is to finish it by 2026. Anybody know what one thing is happening in 2026? Yes, ma'am.
100th anniversary of Route 66.
Oh, you've already won one.
I know I have.
You need to whisper that. You know, there's something else going on that same year, another anniversary. Anybody? 250 years of something. There's a hint.
United States.
There you go. All right. Jeff, you win. 250th anniversary, and as you saw my very first slide, Will Rogers was America, is what Eddie Cantor said. So if we can do all this, our renovating of all the exhibits, we're going to get that and update all our exhibits. If we can get it done by 2026 in the next 3 years, It's going to be huge for us because we're going to have so many people traveling Route 66 and visiting. So we are putting together, Will's character traits. America needs a role model person, and a good citizen role model. And really, and you look at American history outside of maybe George Washington, there's not a better citizen role model than Will Rogers. Just how he treated people. So we have 10 character traits that we're going to be putting throughout the museum and encouraging schools to do this. We're going to have a curriculum to go out to schools. But Will Rogers was a man of humility, a man of empathy. You must not condemn a people until you've been among them and see how and see and know their angle. Man of great enthusiasm. He had tremendous energy. He loved to explore. You'd be surprised what there is to see in this great country within 200 miles of where any of us live. Of course, Will Rogers traveled the entire world. He loved to give. It's great to be great, but it's greater to be human. As I showed you earlier, he went to a small town and did fundraisers for them. What celebrity today will go to a small town and do a fundraiser? Will Rogers did that back then and didn't even think anything of it. Of course, we need to laugh. And that was Will Rogers great at making people laugh. When in doubt, tell a funny story till you see what the other fellow's going to do. And this is him introducing back then it was candidate Roosevelt in 1932. Relax. Half our life is spent trying to find something to do with the time we have rushed through life trying to save. Will Rogers took time to be with his kids to relax. Learn, this is that quote I mentioned earlier. Great picture, and we've colorized all these. There's no color pictures of Will Rogers, so we colorized these 10 pictures. We thought we'd do that for kids today to just kind of see it. And these are really good pictures. One of my favorite work, plans get you into things, but you got to work your way out. And this is Will Rogers doing his daily column from 1927 till the day he died. He did a daily column, and that took a tremendous amount of work. And he did a weekly column. And he was #1 in the radio and had his own radio program, and he was a movie star. So he did all that, and this is amazing to think about. Will Rogers wrote his own material. He didn't have writers like Conan O'Brien and Johnny Carson and all those guys had. Will Rogers did all of it himself. And then, of course, integrity. Rumor travels faster, but don't stay put as long as true. So these 10 character traits we're going to be sharing with kids, sharing with visitors as a citizen role model for the United States and the world. And Will Rogers is the kind of person to look up to. Well respected by people of all ages, all ethnic backgrounds, and all across the world. So we have a campaign, Together We Will, and that's what we're working on now to raise money. Our goal is $18 million. We've already got 7 in the bank. If we sell the Birthplace Ranch, it'll be another $1 million. That means about $10 million that we're going to be raising. We've got Governor Keating and former Senator Stratton Taylor and Barry Corbin and Governor Nye and Robert Henry, Judge Henry, and Jennifer Rogers Etcheberry and a bunch of others that are a part of our campaign to raise money. We're reaching out all across the country to do that, but it's a very exciting time to put this together, and so we will see what happens. So with that, I will answer questions or wrap it up.
Well,
Right on time. Yeah, Phil?
Does the museum have any relationship to the gun collection to the J.M. Davis?
We do not. There's been talk, actually my very first bill I ever debated was a bill about merging the gun museum and the J.M. Davis. And the J.M. Davis then went into a big lawsuit with the state, their foundation, for about 15 years. And it finally settled. But no, there's no partnership at this point. The J.M. Davis is on its own as its own commission. So, at some point they talked about merging with maybe the city of Claremore, but right now we're not connected. Just good friends and help each other however we can. Yes, sir?
Do you guys operate the Will Rogers Facebook page?
We do.
Just some relevant political information that comes out, or satire, I guess, that comes out.
Yeah, we do of course, a quote every day of Will Rogers, which are always timely. My favorite is always, the sin opens with a prayer and closes with an investigation. And so things he said 90 years ago are still as relevant today as they were back then. Yeah. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
Are you associated at all with the California exhibits out there, or how does that work?
Well, Will Rogers' great-granddaughter, Jennifer Rogers Echeverry, she's the chairman of that foundation. Now, that's a state park under the state of California, so we're not directly related, but we do keep in touch with them. They'll be a part of our Route 66 efforts that we do called From the Prairie to the Pacific. Matter of fact, Janet was a large part of that, and our Route 66 is going to be working with that, but they are a state entity of California. When Governor Schwarzenegger got elected, he was going to close it, and he found that if he closed it, it was going to go back to the family. And so they said, well, we don't want to do that. It's prime property overlooking the ocean and Los Angeles, so they invested $5 million in it. But it's a beautiful facility if you haven't been there. Yeah.
Okay, I have one quote, this is from my new book that is very relevant, only we'll change the verbiage. I hope some of the people who get the most votes will be elected.
And I think that's funny too. Again, you know, we talked about that today, and you know, those conversations went on 90 years ago as well. So, all right, Stan, I'll let you have the last book since you're as president.
Oh, well, anyway, here's the thing. Tad, I want to thank you for coming today. Listen, last week I went to that, as I was telling you, I went to that first table reading of Will to Win. And I got to meet Jennifer Rogers Echeverry. And Jim Stovall was there, and the author Jim Stovall, he lost his vision at age 29 to rapidly progressive macular degeneration or something. But he made a point about, you know, he's weird. He writes books he's never read and scripts for movies he's never seen. And we got on the topic of weird stuff. I go, how about this? Number one, Will is sacrosanct. Who could possibly malign Will? Because he made the entire world laugh, and he did it without being profane.
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay. Todd, I got a little token of our appreciation for you here. Now, one of the things I liked about the memorial that came as of 82 was the cinema. Okay, and you know, when's the last time anybody here has ever seen a Will Rogers picture on The Late Show? You know, you didn't, because I guess there was a copyright issue. But they had them all there, you know, and you could buy the videotapes and stuff in the store. And I bought my dad and I bought a few and watched them. But one thing that I always liked about it, though, after that, was that cinema, because it just adds so much character to the place. But I want to give you this. I don't know if you've read this or not. This is about Tulsa movie theaters. A little note in there, you know. Todd, we appreciate you taking the time and making a trip to come see us and do enjoy the movies. And this is from your friends at Rotary Club of Tulsa, Will Rogers. And a little gas card in there for you, too.
That's worth a lot.